Hey guys, WaifuGate here again. So normally I do like a deck tech video on Mondays typically, but since the banned and restricted list is getting updated today, I decided to wait on the update and then do sort of my first impressions on the bans, the change in companions, and such. And I feel like that would be better content moving forward for today, and then we can wait a week for the deck guide video, see what might become popular. But today it's more about like predictions on what might happen to the meta, how this changes things, and all of that stuff, and how it will impact standard. I'm not too familiar with historic, but I can put my 2 cents worth in, but it's probably worth exactly that, just 2 cents. Not really sure if it's going to be great, you know what I mean? Because it's not where I put a lot of my time into. Almost all of my time goes to standard. So here we go. So June 1st, which is today, banned and restricted announcement. New companion rule. Once per game, anytime you could cast a sorcery during your main phase when the stack is empty, you can pay 3 generic mana to put your companion from your sideboard into your hand. This is a special action, not an activated ability. So this changes things a lot. The main thing that I jump to in my head is how Lurrus decks will not really be able to make use of that companion at all. And Obosh, like if you're paying 3 mana to take the turn off, it just feels bad compared to having like, you know, a normal 60 card deck. Like for example, in Sakdos, which is red-black, like almost Aristocrats, where you run like Cat Oven and all of this other stuff. You can only run odd cards, right, with Obosh. And they use like banners and stuff. And it's like they run really low to the ground land count wise. So if they take the whole turn off to put a 5-drop into their hand and they project what they're going to do, like, hey, I want to cast this next turn, it's just too slow, I feel, you know, compared to just having an extra card in your hand. Basically is how it worked before, was the companions were an 8th card in your opener hand. And that was just really powerful because you threatened to cast that whenever yeah, it's kind of hard to word that. You just threaten to cast that on any given moment. There we go. Just like some type of a, sentence there would be nice. And same thing with Lurrus, like you're sacrificing your 3-drops like Woe Strider, Midnight Reaper, etc. And the cycling list, like, the cycling list I feel is one of those ones that might be able to afford it. I don't think that will change too much, but let's try to figure out what we want to talk about here specifically. Like, how does the companion rule shake up the meta? Separate from the bans, which we'll get to. How does this impact? How you have to, nowadays it'll be more about, like, you have to really commit to the companion now. Like if you put Yorion in a control list, it feels like it could still work. You are sacrificing the consistency on your sideboard card, right? You're sacrificing the consistency on finding your sideboard cards after you sideboard them in, with Yorion specifically. So like lists that run like, Bant Yorion, U White Yorion, stuff like this, that aren't really super impacted by the bans we have coming up here that you can see on the screen. Like those decks are still probably okay, but is it worth it because now it becomes an 8 mana play instead of a 5 mana play that you threaten? So how does that impact the game? Well, for one, Yorion specifically is super weak to Mystical Dispute at that rate, right? Because you pay 3, which is the mana you could threaten to pay for Mystical Dispute, right? You have to pay that to get it into your hand initially. So then it's like a turn delayed, right? You put it into your hand, you don't want to cast it, maybe because Mystical Dispute, and you don't have your Teferi up or something. And then, like, do you have your own Mystical Disputes from your sideboard? Do you have your counter spells, your vetoes, etc.? Like, your answers to Teferi 3-head, whether that's Brazen Borrower or something else. Do you get to see those cards because you're running 80 cards for this slow play now where you have to pay 3 mana, put it into your hand, and then threaten to cast it later. You're also projecting to your opponent that you're thinking about casting it, instead of always threatening to cast it no matter what. Because the opponent can be like, oh, they don't have Yorion in their hand yet. They're going to have to pay another 3 mana. I can commit more to the board right now and do this and this and this before they can develop, Yorion to flash in their ECD. Messes with that timing really badly too, right? Like, being able to threaten Yorion on an ECD because it's on the field, having to pay 3 more mana makes it very difficult to set those awesome value plays up. Like Omen of the Sea is still good. Birth probably doesn't get hit as much in you white control now with Yorion, right? Because it's delayed so much. It does give you an early game play as a control player, sort of. You can be like, oh, I'll just pay 3 mana this turn, but then you're tapped out. You didn't get to play Omen. You don't get to threaten a neutralize or anything like that. So it's tough. I don't know. I'll still probably mess around with U-White control and Bant control with Yorion specifically, especially if I don't have to worry about, like, Luca fires because of Agent being banned, I think Winota is probably going to pick up as the cheese deck, potentially with damage, even in Standard. I've seen, like, a lot of Nihilists kind of surface anyway, like prior to the announcement of the bans and all of that stuff. So we'll see how it goes, we'll see what happens. But in regards to the other decks in the meta, so that's sort of like Yorion and where it might fit. Elementals might actually still run it because they have a lot of land. So I think that deck will pick up a lot because it's still explosive, allows you to play a lot of different cards, and I don't think they're impacted as much as the other decks. They can't threaten to, flash in their elemental super early, but mostly that was sort of a late game thing anyway. However, their Genesis becomes a lot weaker without Agent, so maybe that deck does get hit a little bit, but I think that it could still be super viable. If we, I think you'll probably run more copies of, like, Forerunners and maybe Finale of, Devastation, the green one that, lets you cast that from the deck, and, you can still hit Cavalier, so I think that deck will still be good. In regards to Luris and Obosh in general, I think that all of the food type decks, or, cat type decks to be more specific, will switch more toward Jund food. That's my prediction there. All of those decks will either split. So the Rakdos Obosh will become Knights again, probably, with Rotting Regisaurs to try to punish the control decks. And I think that the decks that were trying to be more mid-rangey and stuff, like Luris, where they would, slow play you, not really slow play you, but always threaten to do something in their graveyard with Luris. After you deal with their cat oven the first time, they threaten Luris to try to get some more stuff back. I think we're going to see all of those types of decks, like the Obosh ones, kind of split into Jund food, because that deck was picking up popularity before anyway. This is just going to spike the deck in popularity, I think. In regards to cycling, I think they'll probably just run the deck without Luris. That deck is still probably fine. And now for a budget option as a player, you can just craft that deck without the companion and you're probably fine. You can spend the resources on lands instead. Maybe we'll see, the Jeskai cycle become a little more popular because you'll be able to run 3 CMC cards, which can make a huge difference in the meta. You could end up running some more creatures that could help you out. I'm not sure what those are yet because I haven't put a lot of brain power and digging into that. But I really feel like it is a good opportunity for cycle lists to sort of diversify and produce more threats, And I mean, the other companion, what's the other one? Amori, being able to pay 3 mana for that. We see a lot of Amori Gruul. That's become a little more popular. Fires is getting banned, so I mean, we don't really have to talk about Kurega Fires because that's not a deck anymore. There was a list running Kurega with Tamir Reclamation, and I don't think that deck's going to be that great anymore either. Actually, that deck could probably afford it, actually. That's one of the ones that doesn't get hit too hard if you want to commit to it. It's just that you have to pay 3 mana to put it into your hand and then threaten to do it later, which sort of projects your turns. But you have so much mana to work with in that list. If you guys are unfamiliar about that list that I'm talking about, it's a list that Crokeys and Danny T. Law, I think is his name. Both really good streamers. You guys know Crokeys if you're watching Magic stuff, of course. But Danny T is not as big of a streamer, but still puts out really good content and collaborates with people like Crokeys. I've been meaning to pull him into a co-stream for about like a couple months now, back when I was playing Tamir Rack. But anyway, that's sort of like, you know, on a tangent, so we'll bring it back. But that deck was made popular by them a bit. It just uses like Brazen Borrowers, Bone Crushers. It can't run anything less than 3 mana, right? So like we don't have Growth Spiral, for example. And you run more like a creature heavy deck, as opposed to the instants and sorceries to counter your opponent and such so much. You kind of rely on a Timely Mystic or a Mystical Dispute. I think it runs 4 of those main board, Mystical Disputes, kind of fight the Teferius. But yeah, anyway, I think that deck might still be okay. Especially without Agent Luca Fires, like you don't have to worry about countering stuff as much to get ahead. So that deck isn't impacted by it too much. And then the I forget the companion's name, the goat thing, Kahira, I think. With Fires, Kahira Fires, that deck's dead, of course. Our boy Delmo made that list a little popular. So sadly, that's going to have to get retired just because of Fires not being a thing. And then the Mori lists, I'm not sure if it's worth it anymore. Like that girl list wasn't that popular to begin with. Like it was picking up some popularity, but without that card and there's like a Dimir Flash list that was running Emori for a little while as well, with like Stonecoil Serpents and stuff like that. And I don't think that list can honestly pay 3 mana to put that into their hand. It was more or less just a free 8th card, so I think that list is kind of dead. But bringing it all back, I think this is healthy for the meta overall. I think that it's way more fair than just having 8 cards in your hand. And this was also mentioned, something like this was mentioned in Jeff Hoogland's Twitter when people were speculating on how things were going to change. And Jeff wanted some way to be able to like Agonizing Remorse or Thought Erasure, like some type of a hand hate type deal to deal with the companions. And this is sort of that. So I'm glad that, you know, something was done about it, basically, because it did feel very underwhelming if you tried to run a deck without a companion. And now it's more of a choice, you know, because you have to decide whether you can pay 3 generic mana at sorcery speed to put that into your hand, as opposed to why am I not running a companion? And it's more of a rhetorical question in that sense, like with how it was before. So I think that'll be good. So overall lists going forward in this meta, like let's talk about the bans real quick too, and then do a whole summary type deal, and that'll probably be it. So Agent of Treachery is banned. Fires is banned. So this hits Jeskai Fires, the one that was just using like Cavaliers pretty badly because, you know, that was the whole deck. So, and then right now this is suspended in Historic. I feel, okay, so my 2 cents before we get into the standard stuff, I just want to touch on the Historic from what I've understood and the little bit that I've played. I'll get my 2 cents worth. I feel like this is fine and this is fine. But I feel like the problem in Historic was more or less Winota, is what I hear people griping about a lot. People come into my chat and be like, free wins, just play Winota, get to Mythic. And, you know, it's kind of a meme, but at the same time, if you invest the wild cards, you know, it's pretty crazy. It can be really, really explosive. You just get turn 3, turn 4 wins all the time with the Marauders that come down and you just do so much damage. And it's a really hard deck to stop. And these suspensions don't stop that in Historic. And like that deck can whiff if it doesn't draw Winota like any other deck with like sort of combo pieces. But at the same time, if your audience is complaining about something, and you address one side of the fence like standard, the other side of the fence is going to be pretty upset for the most part. So I think they could have done better with the historic changes here is my 2 cents worth. Like Winota should get suspended as well or something else, because then I don't know what takes over the format. Like maybe Winota is keeping decks in check that I don't know about, like Nexus of Fate or Field of the Dead, like Scape Shift stuff, or it's self-mill lists. I remember Sidetrack linking me list. I don't have enough information about this really to make more of a judgment call than what about Winota? Like I can throw that question out there. Maybe you guys have an opinion on that, some information that I don't. And if you want to throw that into the comments below, I'd really appreciate it, because I'm interested in historic, but I'm a little hesitant on spending wild cards to jump into the format. I've mainly just been dipping my toe into the water with stuff that I already crafted, like Search for Azcanta and such. But I haven't really put a lot of time or resources into that, so I'd really appreciate that. So going back to standard, where I do have a little more information. So we've got Agent of Treachery is banned and Fires is banned. So fire decks are just dead. We don't have to deal with people stealing our lands for the most part. There's not a lot in standard that interacts with that. You can blow up lands if you're Strider Stone. Dude just runs land destruction, so both in historic and standard. But aside from that, I don't mind getting memed on once in a while. But like Agent always felt so unfun to play, and also to play against, more so on the ladder there. It was just very, very hard to play against, very frustrating when you almost would win and they would just get the combo off, and you're like, and that happens with most combo decks. Like if you almost win against the meta combo deck and then it just barely gets there, it's frustrating. But it was more so frustrating with Agent because it just feels so bad having your lands just taken from you. Like I should be able to play Magic and interact with my opponent. It's why I don't like Teferi 3 that much in the meta, because it just shuts off a part of Magic that's fundamental, that makes it different from Hearthstone, different from, Shadowverse, etc. But Teferi takes away that dimension of the game, and that's just terrible. And Agent felt like it was in the same category, where it takes away my lands so I can't react to what my opponent's doing. I feel powerless. And yes, I know that Control does that. I play Control. I understand that. But it just feels like I'm cheated when people just grab my resources. So I'm really happy about this. And I'm pretty okay with this too, because this felt like it broke part of Magic too. But this was more fair, I kind of feel, in some sense, because you can have enchantment hate or whatever else. This is easier to interact with and stop almost. This was just impossible to deal with at a certain point in the game. Even with Mystical Dispute, if they had Teferi, boom, it's off. So in regards to how this is going to affect standard, Jeskai Luca dead, Jeskai Fires dead. Most of the companion lists are butchered to some extent. Like I think the lower to the ground aggro lists are just going to switch to doing their old thing with like Rakdos, Knights, Rotting Regisaurs, Embercleave, that type of thing. The Lurrus lists are going to go to Jund Food. And then the cycling lists will be fine without Lurrus. They don't need it. They can still win the game. It takes away a bit of their dimension, but it diversifies their sideboard cards and just their options main deck in general. Maybe we'll see more Improbable Alliance lists with the blue splash, and maybe more lands like the Jeskai Triomes, because that stuff is going to stay in standard for a while. So we're going to see that list evolve, I think. I think it'll still be fine, especially since it's so budget worthy. It's so easy to get that list rolling, especially without Lurrus, man. You don't even need a rare for that deck now, because it might just be too slow. But if you end up cracking a copy, you can like play test it, see if it's too slow or not. Because honestly, like you can still pay 3 mana for Lurrus, put it into your hand, and then keep mana open to cycle a card on your turn, your opponent's turn, etc., and still threaten to cast, Zenith Flare. So that list is still good. And then we're not going to have to worry about Bant Yori and grabbing our stuff now with Agent being banned. It's just nice, man. Grill Fire's dead. This is stuff that I've already said. I'm trying to figure out if I'm missing anything here, like points of topics. So historic. I just think they can do a little bit better here. So we get wild cards for fires and agents. None for historic, not historic, but companions, because you can still use them. They're not banned. I feel like they could throw us a bone and give us a wild card for each companion or something, just to be nice, but that's not necessary. That's just more like a good faith effort on their part. If they wanted to do that, it would win a lot of favor for a little bit of an investment, you know? Like one wild card per companion seems like it could just curry the favor for everyone, but maybe that's, you know. Oh, this is kind of cool. So Fires of Invention and Agent of Treachery will be removed from standard ICRs, which are individual card rewards on your daily wins and such, and weekly wins. Are not currently available as historic. Companion cards will still be obtainable. Okay, cool. You'll still be able to complete the event. Okay, that's fine. So this is hitting pretty soon, but yeah. So in summary, I think this is good, but I feel like Teferi 3 could have been hit here for standard on the ban, just because it just feels really overpowered and overtuned. And the companions, I think this is a good change. This is just solid. I think it changes the meta, so it's not so much of a no-brainer and you have to think about it. And I think it's going to shake up the meta quite a bit. But I think Jun Food will be on the top of the lists. We'll probably see maybe like some type of a control list that tries to go over the top of the aggro that's going to be coming out, because aggro is always consistent. So when something like this changes, it's a fresh meta. People don't know what's going to be super, super great. So they're going to default to aggro that just, you know, has the chance of making it so the opponent just doesn't have it and you win. So like, you know, regular mono red might make a comeback. You know what I'm saying? Like Ember Cleave, Steamkin, stuff like that. It's going to be like Jun Food, maybe Bant Ramp, old Bant Ramp, maybe, since you don't have to deal with Jeskai Luca anymore. Bant Ramp ramping into stuff like Nissa, maybe Hydroid Krasis, maybe like a 2-of. And then like ECDs are still going to be phenomenal. Just for recursion and stuff. Like I think that type of a list is going to be really, really good still, like Bant Ramp. U White still might be a little popular. They might have enough time to even utilize Yori, and same thing with the Bant, but maybe not. Maybe we'll see 60 card piles. So those type of lists will be up at the top, like Jun Food, Mono Red, I think, regular, no Obosh or anything. Bant Ramp, U White Control. And then what else do we have here that's not impacted? Like Tamir Reclamation might make a comeback as well. I think Tamir Rec would be really, really good. Jeskai Cycling still going to be fine. Mono White Luris. This deck lived and died with Jeskai Fires. This list countered Jeskai Luca hard, just because you could play Hushbringer for free and just win that matchup. Tamir Adventures is probably going to be up there because this didn't use a companion, so this list is going to be up at the top. And I would say Reclamation is going to be up at the top as well. Grow Midrange could be okay, but Kahira is dead, so like this list is probably not so much. Sultai Midrange has sort of been like a little dirtily, but it might now have time to develop that type of stuff. And especially if companions are going to be grabbable in the hand, like Thought Erasure seems to look a little bit better. Esper Yorion, I don't think it can take enough time to like set up and grab stuff from the hand, so I don't think we'll see that too much. But Tamir Adventures is probably going to be up in the top like 4 lists, I would say. So if I had to give an overall like what's going to be most popular, it's going to be like Jun Food up at the top. Probably I would say Tamir Reclamation maybe at number 2, Tamir Adventures number 3, Cycling at 4. And then some type of, whether it's going to be like Azorius or Bant, Yorion, or even without Yorion, like just that type of a ramp list or that type of control list is going to be in the 5. So that's what I would say. That's my predictions. Because none of those decks get super hit by these. So this is going to be a tough one to deal with. But yeah, I appreciate it. If you guys have any comments or questions about what I think about the new changes, something I didn't cover here, feel free to drop a comment below, or simply stop by my stream. I stream every day from like Wednesdays to Sundays 2 a.m. to about 9 a.m. Central Time. And I usually just play Magic, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to do that. I also make a YouTube video a day. I've been doing that for about like 3 weeks now, so if you guys like the content, feel free to subscribe and you'll get notifications on all the videos coming out if you can't catch me on stream and you want to chill out for a minute with me. And I will catch you guys next time. Thanks again for dropping by, and I hope this was helpful.